the critical oxygen concentration, the DO for determining. Suppose the fermenter has a facility of injecting 1 to 10 liters per minute. That's the range of the air it can let in. So one has to determine the KLA and critical oxygen concentration at each, like for example, we are letting in 5 liters per minute go. Do we need to determine the KLA and the critical oxygen concentration at that level, or?
You don't need to determine critical level oxygen. Okay, of course you can determine if you want, but that is not required. The only thing is that you have to maintain about 25%. Because if you maintain about 25% the DO, then it is above the critical level in general for all types of metal. Even those highly demanding or the low demanding ones. As far as the question of KLA is concerned, KLA is a must if you want to go from one scale to another scale. If you do not measure KLA, then you don't have a parameter. What you will measure? Okay, then you will measure only cell concentration, you will measure only product concentration. That is okay. But when you go to scale, okay, at a higher scale, now from shake class to 10 liters is fine. 10 to 100 liters is also fine. But when you go to further higher scale, then you will miss. And then you will not know what is the reason. If oxygen is limiting, then you will not know if your KLA is correct and oxygen is limiting. Or what you will do, you will excessively aerate the system. And you have seen that if you excessively aerate the system, you have to pay more cost. Extra amount. And I calculated for you, just to increase the rate, okay, it costs at least $100,000 to $200,000 per year. That's not enough. 200,000 means almost 1.2 crores of rupees. That means you will be giving extra for no reason because you have not optimized your DO and you have not optimized your emission rate. In a plant of capacity 1 million, how much was that if I remember? Anyway, around that. 1,000 or 1 million. Calculation for this. It's kind of at 200,000 liters per year. It's nothing. 200,000 liters per year formulation. That means 10 times of this, so about 2 million liters. So that translates into $200,000 because it's in dollars, right? $200,000 means 1.2 crores rupees. So that's a lot of money. There's a lot of money for here and there's a lot of money for there too. Because the assistant costs us roughly $60,000 to $70,000. If it's $200,000, we can keep 3 assistants in the plant. Yep.
Madam?
No, sir.
Do you have any question?
We will certainly have questions. No. Because he was looking at me when I just finished it. Okay, you will have. चलिए बताइए शुरू बताइए छोटा नहीं बड़ा सा पूछो नहीं जोर से पूछो ताकि तुम्हारी रिकॉर्डिंग हो
विस्कोसिटी जो मेजर हम लोग जो मतलब कर रहे थे तो उसको मतलब कि ड्यूरिंग द कोर्स ऑफ जैसे ऑनलाइन उसको कैसे जैसे फर्मेंटर चल रहा है उसी समय मेजर करते हैं कि उसको फिर निकाल के ऐसे टाइम पॉइंट पे निकाल के
You can do both ways. If you have a system, online system as a matter of viscosity, yes you can. But it exists.
Real time monitoring.
It exists, but this is okay through sampling and on the viscometer. So take the sample, the student has taken the sample and then gone through the viscometer to measure the viscosity with all those spindles and all that. Okay. That's a rudimentary process. But we have a very good the modern viscometer. Because not only for the during fermentation, but in the viscosity is very important during the fermentation. So we have like our system, I told you that because of the small drop size, because of the viscosity. So viscosity is very critical. Normally it does not appear in fermentation optimization, but when you go further downstream processing, it becomes really very critical.
Even it's also hamper the production.
Because it will influence the diffusion rate of oxygen.
Yes, but it's not okay. Yes, it is important, but it's not that important. As important it is during formulation. Formulation it can cost you a lot of money and it can really spoil your formulation. You know, before we go for the real spraying, but through aerial spray we have to test the product, okay, with all these characteristics of which will be involved in the plane, okay. like drop size, wind speed, and everything, all this, and there are tests for that, and there are some people. I know only one place in Canada, and this is called so-called the wind tunnel test, and they exactly simulate the conditions of the airplane in the field, exactly the same conditions, right? And then they see where the drop is going, everything is okay, falling, how much is falling, and then they calculate also how much per hectare it is spraying, everything. And when we did those tests, everything was excellent. So it was to a surprise when we found that our droplet size was low when we went to the actual plane. But I feel that the company is not telling us, but what they did, because when they have new formulation, they have to calibrate the plane, or they have to calibrate the spraying system in the plane. And it appears to me that they did not calibrate. Because when you have a new formulation, so you have to calibrate the system because its characteristics may be different than what the standard or whatever they are using it. So according to that, they should have done that, and I have a big feeling that they are not telling us due to some reasons, God knows what, but certainly they have not. Because once the wind tunnel tests are correct, then why these tests are not correct on the plane, then of course it's anybody's guess. And that one test costs about $10,000. A lot of money. $10,000 makes about 6 lakh rupees.
So you try the spraying thing at the lab level also, like from a...
Yeah, we did everything. Yeah, we did like those spraying, as you might be spraying, you might have some spray of soap or something like that, or detergents in home, exactly that type of thing. We got the spruce plants, okay, the trees, okay, something like 3 feet to 4 feet, okay, from the nursery, and we had some 200 trees, and then we had sprayed our formulation, and then we tested also for stickiness, that it stayed, so we passed some water. So in order to put the rain, to simulate the rain, so we went, okay, for example, through the statistics Quebec, and how much will be the rainfall approximately in 15 days. And that much water we took, and then we sprayed without spraying, okay, in the lab. And then we saw that, okay, how much ingredient was going down. And all those plants, they were kept in a tub, maybe, okay, 2 by 3 meters tub, okay, a plastic tub. And these plants spraying, we spray. So we first spray the BT, and then we give that to dry up a couple of hours, and after that we check this. This is the sticky adhering test. We also did the UV test, and I think there is something here. And then those UV tests, okay, we exposed it to 100 different UV strength and UV wavelength, and so those must be there somewhere here. Yeah. So that's what's wrong. The formulation media, okay, formulation, no UV screen, and formulation with UV screen. UV screen mean, okay, in the formulation you have to add certain chemicals like molasses and there are other compounds. And you add them because we use molasses in that. That stops the UV rays. Okay? That is capacity because there are certain compounds, and they call those color compounds in molasses. It's dark brown color. I think everybody has seen that. It's not used in that country. So then you add that, and that also add to the sticky nature of the sludge, of the biopesticide, and then you expose it. And then you can see that fermentation media. The half-life is on the non-hydrolyzers. Oh, where is my mic? You are not recording me? Recording. Okay, it's okay. So it's a non-hydrolyzer, so I can move freely. So it's a non-hydrolyzer here. Okay, so this is without the fermented media. Formulation no UV screen, and formulations with UV screen. So basically in slash, you see there is no impact of UV screen. And there you save a lot of money. So every time you save something, it's usually this amount, because just I multiplied that by how much? 1 million. So when you multiply a very small fraction, it appears here 0.1, 0.2, but when it goes to multiplication of 1 million, because that's how you operate the industry, it runs into crores of rupees. Okay? Immediately. So same thing here, thermal hydrolysis. So this is the fermented media. So it's improved a little bit because of the hydrolysis and probably some absorbing compounds, UV absorbing compounds are released, and it's the same story, but it is less than useless because it contains non-hydrolysis contains a more complex material, and because if you remember, UV is the technology also to pre-treat sludge. So basically, the non-hydrolyzed sludge can absorb, probably has the capacity to absorb more UV without affecting your reactions, where the thermal treatment now. Something for SIW, the starch industry wastewater. So this is okay now. So this helps a lot because there are some less compounds, so it's improved. But in soya, that's an industry standard, so that's what they require. Lots of chemicals to add to protect that. Okay? When they are UV screen, so that's the 6 days is the high point. Correct. So that's why the reason that they have to apply the second coat after 1 week time. So they have to go for second coat. Otherwise, after 6 days, it is quite possible that this will be degraded, and the insects, by the time they wake up after the first shock, so they will start eating. So there is no ingredient, and they will flourish. Good for them. So that's the reason you go for another 30, 40, or $50 million. So each coat, that's how much it costs. For us, for example, when we tested over 1,000 liters of 1,000 liters of formulations, 1 liter per hectare, so you can imagine, you can multiply, calculate how many hectare was treated. So it costs roughly $200,000. A lot of money.
It's just one food, sir.
You can ask any question. Go ahead.
So this is related to alkaline hydrolysis only.
No, this thermal hydrolysis.
No, so my question is related to alkaline.
Okay, related. Okay.
Yeah. You said that we need to take the pH up to 12, leave it for a day or two for the hydrolysis to take. But this is like a pre-treatment. But when we are using this as a media, and for example, organism, to grow the organism, the pH is very high. Then you would have to add acid or do something to bring down the pH as well, right?
Okay. I think this problem might be okay. Okay, there are two different processes. There is one alkaline hydrolysis only, then alkaline and thermal hydrolysis. So in alkaline hydrolysis, you adjust the pH and leave it there. After that day, then you sterilize. You adjust the pH and sterilize. And then you know. Correct? But this technology is not important. Because hydrolysis is not effective. You have to store for a day, so you have to construct a daily storage tank. Use the storage tank. Okay? When you talk about 1 million liters of operations, so it's been multiplied. Just imagine what will be the volume of the storage tank required. You lab में तो ठीक है चलो लगा दिए कुछ भी सब ठीक है. Doesn't matter. बीकर इधर लगाए, बीकर में लगाए, it's fine. But it doesn't work that way. The process is therefore, okay, and anyway, this technology does not work. It doesn't hydrolyze it through that much. Not only hydrolyzing, but it's only the alkaline thermal hydrolysis. That way, so you adjust the pH to that and sterilize it. And cool it down, readjust the pH, enough. But on the other hand, like we were talking about anaerobic digestion, here we are talking about 21 degrees centigrade, there it was 40 and 50 degrees centigrade. So that's the difference between anaerobic digestion and the BT phase. And just while passing, comment just about, because BT produces lots of dehydrogenase activity. It also produces peroxidase activity. And it also produces the third enzyme, I forgot my number the name, not lactase, which is something else. Okay. Anyway, so that enzyme is very, very active during the active growth of BT, and it is very good to degrade lots of mineralogy, toxic organic compounds. Okay, so that's very good. Okay, and we have checked for many compounds. Fortunately, I have the results in the thesis here, but then I have to open and go through that. But certainly, if you want, I can open that thesis, and it completely degrades. And we have checked the toxicity also. It's not just the degradation of the parental compound that is done, but also we have checked the toxicity through the genetic mutations of these, and we found that there is no toxicity of it. Mineralogy, आपका एक क्वेश्चन था बहुत तीव्र. So that was it. Because that's an advantage. Okay? So we have checked also for 4-5 compounds, and including the bisphenol methylphthalate, and two more compounds I don't remember. Bisphenol completely works. Well, to begin with, the concentration is not very high.
Right.
Concentration is very low, but whatever is that low.
It's still toxic.
Whereas, as I said to you many times, there is no limit in that. So, at the present time, there is no need to worry about that. Until something happens in the field, because continuously Forestry Canada is picking up samples from everywhere and trying to analyze the changes in the diversities, we call it the biodiversity. That's their job throughout the country, and they have the lab almost everywhere in Canada. 5-6 lab almost every province of Canada, and their job is just to go in the forest and pick the samples and then keep on changes in the biodiversity to see what is happening. And if something happens, then immediately know the time of so because in this case, the applications of BT, especially, they are very, very cautious to know how anything is changing in the forest. Because forest, as I said, is the number one economics of Canada, or economic needs of Canada.
Manish, you have any question?
Yes, sir. Sir, what about that human exposure, like for
BT is not toxic to humans, you can even drink it.
BT?
But it's not, don't drink it, but if it's not in a proper media, then you can even drink it. No, it's not harmful. It's not toxic.
Maybe it's have been checked for 2 or 3 or 4 generations, something like that.
Yeah, it has been, okay. BT has been used everywhere for generations, so I don't think so. So far, at least, I do not know anything. But normally, BT can get contaminated during the production by Bacillus medicus, and that can cause some zoonotic problem. But before it is applied to the forest, it is very well verified that there is no contamination. And we have to deal with the problem because we are getting a lot of contamination in our pilot plant, because our pilot plant was new, so we did not know from where the contamination was coming. So we wasted a lot of material, a lot of days in these operations, and then ultimately we found what was happening. But they are very particular about, and there are set norms for working. I have some slides, but I didn't go to my whole course, but I think I had something level of standard. Okay. I think this is the one. For the formulations, like maximum allowable levels of microbial contamination, for example. So that's what it is. Viable mesophyll, 10 to the power 5. This is other than BT. Okay. Viable yeast and mold, less than 100. Okay, here CFE per gram. And coliforms and tocopherol, less than 10 per gram. Staphylococcus, less than 1. Salmonella, less than 19. And fecal streptococci, less than 10 to the power 4. But this level of contamination never occurs in the formulation, because it is coming out of your lab. Okay, it's gone through all installation cycle. So during the formulations, probably it can come through the manhandling. Otherwise, there is no chance of getting it contaminated. But there are some countries who are producing BT, like China, and Canada wanted to export because China always produces at a much lower cost. Okay, like the Indian markets are also carrying Chinese goods because they are cheaper. So they are also too. So they checked and they found that it is also contaminated, and they rejected it as But it's for sure that all the laws, they are very well taken care, and nothing moves. Because otherwise, if something happens, who will take responsibility? Very well said. So next.
Yes. Microbial growth we just usually count by taking either OD or
No, here we take the sample and we count on the plates.
CFE per annum. And how do we count spore count?
Spore count, okay. For a spore count, okay, what you do, you take the sample, you heat it to 80 degrees centigrade for 15 minutes.
We heat it to 200?
80 degrees centigrade for 15 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes, so all the vegetative cells will die and all the spores will survive. And that's the nuclear. So simple. Yeah, I remember a couple of years back, there was a big debate in my lab.
Because
Some
you
of the
also-
students were saying there are errors, some saying it's not correct, okay, that's not errors. So then we started up the problem is I gave it to many students the same time to do exactly the same way. And the other people are also reporting the information. So simply take the tube or the dilution tube. Put in a water bath, reciprocating water bath, gallon can, and temperature will be in the water. But make sure that inside the temperature, the sample is because sometimes what can happen, okay, the sample that's the swim that normally they don't think about it. But when you put the tube inside it, so your wall temperature is a little bit, but inside the probe may not be a little bit. And that may take some time. So in your 20 minutes which you are exposing, probably 10 minutes gone to the equalize the temperature of the tube, and then you will introduce the error. And because you don't determine your standard deviation, so
Because
you
then
never know
life
that.
cells will also.
Huh?
Because if the heating process will not be good, then it
Well,
will
yeah.
further.
Vegetarian cells.
Now to eliminate that, you have to determine your own standard deviation. But every student has to determine for every analysis standard deviation. That was I was explaining to Khushbu. Sorry, Khushbu, I was a little bit harsh with you.
No, sir, it's all
But
right.
that's the way every student has to do. And the examiner, when examines the thesis, they are very particular about it. That the data variations every time that you get that those type of standard deviations. I think I have some on the pilot plant data I had from my student. Yeah, so he has shown me that. Let me see where it is. Over here. There's a window. Here. See that? You see that all those every data. So what the students do when they are running the fermenter, for each data points they have to take 2 samples. Okay, let's say fermenter is running, so there is three samples at the same time. Okay, and they analyze exactly the same way every sample. Okay, and then they determine all these variations. And nowadays the data are not acceptable if you do not have these standard variations. Many journals will return your papers, and many reviewers are very particular about it. But anyway, it should be there. In my opinion, also, it should be there, and I do not provide any of the data of my students except unless they have it. Of course, I know so. Triples are one analysis, but it will go twice. Because as this, everything is prone to error, like this heating. I told you that. And it's very common error. It can occur because the students are in hurry to go at 12 o'clock in the night. They want to go and sleep, but he is analyzing because he has to analyze. So he put it and oscillating and then and this is not. I mean, this is not something unusual, but this happened when I was a student. It was happening to me. So we have to make sure that we are cautious and make the students work correctly. So when the student answers the first time in my lab, that's what I ask him. So when we allot some problems, so immediately we find what analysis he's going to perform for all types of analysis, and then it's the first thing. Okay, go and do the first experiment and determine your standard deviation for all the measurements. For all the measurements. And that is the first time the standard deviation. He has to repeat 10 samples for each measurement. Let's say if he has to determine the lipid, for example, so he has to take 10 samples at the same time. 10. And then he has to analyze this and then find out his own standard deviation. Because there is nothing better than that. That's the best rule. Because that every time you move your hand, you do your error, so you do yourself. And you will find by yourself whether you are correct or not. So nobody is there to tell you and feed you.
So if it goes like पीछे से एक कार्बन ग्राफ हो गई
Which one? Slide number.
Variation of viscosity and KLA.
Just 2 graph.
Yeah.
52.
हाँ ये बात.
55.
Sir, in case of alkaline hydrolysis cells, As
Thermal Klein Edwards. Okay, lower, yellow one. Klein Edwards is yellow one.
no, I want to ask you. In the case of alkaline, the viscosity of the no sir, in this case, the viscosity increases at 20 to 25 hours, but the maximum growth in bacilli occurs at around 10 to 12 hours. Then what will be the possible explanation for this?
God knows what.
Hmm?
God knows. That should not happen.
It should not happen.
Because actually here, it should go like this.
Exactly. It should increase at
It
that
should
Go
point
like this.
and then
this.
not at this.
But sometimes, you have the data. So these data were derived by one of my very, very senior student. So I had no chance or no space to not believe it. But yes, that opens the question why it is doing that. So we'll repeat the experiment. But now that's one experiment. We have thousands of experiments. We did 20 years of
And
research.
some findings.
Huh?
And some findings.
Still?
No,
No, it's not. I mean, this is just to show that how the viscosity varies during fermentation. But this is not very critical because this is not formulation. As long as, because this is just to show that viscosity increases and it can impact your BU. Like this, this color is, so like in this case, increases here, so it can impact, but this impact is not that great unless you have the EPS, for example.
Because
if you have an EPS,
Because at that time point, there will be maximum spore concentration.
yeah,
in the
no,
spore form.
the spore concentration will be somewhere here. Let's see where is it.
Exactly, so within that
Around, let's
that
say,
is
it is
clear only.
maximum around 20 hours.
20 to 20
So
exactly.
around 20 hours, what is that? Endotoxin. So here is a spore, around 24 hours maximum.
And,
So it's 20
and some
hours.
phenomena is coming there.
Sometimes it comes. Sometimes it doesn't come, we have no explanation. So we have to put also in the paper when the editor asks, well, at this moment, we have no explanation. But it can be like this. Probably.
Sir, what about TPS?
No, but you see, many things can happen. In the fermenter, many things can happen. If the instrument has not run the fermenter, you will see that very soon that there may be a lot of foam. And when there is a lot of foam, a lot of material comes out. This one will start floating with the foam. And when you add anti-foam, you suppress the foam, and this residue it is deposited on the wall. And when it is deposited on the wall, everything will decrease. And the students never understand that. They don't care for it, and they continue until unless if I go by chance, I see that I tell this. Of course, they're experienced student, they know. But they were at least the pressures or something like that. So many things can happen during fermentation. In fact, fermentation is something you cannot just start your fermenter, go and sleep. I will come back after 4 hours to take my sample, or I will come back after 6 hours. No, you have to constantly watch it because anything can happen anytime. Because most of these wells, they think, of course, they are robust system, they work perfectly fine, but it's still something can happen. After all, it is machinery, it can fail. And especially when you are working on flesh, it's so much of foam, and it's unbelievable. When you run the fermenter, it's like little moment. I expect her to run the fermenter and have an experience, and then the machine can. It's not coming strong. In fact, in our fermenter, when we constructed the pilot plant, we have to construct a mechanical foam breaker on top of it, which is very expensive, $500,000. Just alone, $100,000. And the way it works, there is a rotor there, like a centrifuge, and it sucks the air. And when it sucks the air, so it sucks the foam. And because it's rotating at the same time, so during the rotation, it has centrifuge action, the foams are squeezed, and the liquid drops back. Right? But then, no, what I'm telling you that, okay, they are constructed and they work very well, but they also fail when you're using sludge. They're not able to cope with that intense foaming which is created on the top of the fermenter. So sometimes we have to go not to fill the fermenter to 70% capacity. Because normally when you operate a fermenter, you operate at 70% of the total capacity. So if you have 100-liter fermenter, you cannot fill more than 70%. So then we started going to some 60% filling or to make sure that the top impeller is not outside the loop, so it is inside the loop. Like you have how many, 2 or 3 impellers? 3 impeller. So when you run your fermenter, you have to make sure that, because fermenter is designed in such a way that all your 3 impellers must be inside the liquid. And even that you have to calculate that we'll keep on drying the sample, okay, and the impeller will stay inside. Otherwise you'll keep on drying, the volume keep on falling, and then of course even your probe may hang in the air rather than, and it has happened in my lab when I some of the students. There are some crazy people all the time. Not all the people are correct. So and I noted many times that they took the sample, the volume went down, and the probe was from the side, and at the end of the day, the probe was hanging in the air, and it was still. So you have to make sure that your impeller is inside. Forget about the probe is quite down, but the first thing is the impeller. Otherwise, your KLA will change. KLA change. DO may not change because small fermenter, you will keep on increasing the speed, and you will keep on increasing aeration, no problem, no cost. But at the same time, the KLA will change.
You were telling about effect of viscosity on production of EPS something.
Oh yeah, because EPS is a compound that becomes very viscous, right? And then, you really create a lot of viscosity. You have a lot of shear stress on the impeller, and so you can feel that even in the motor you have to exert a lot of power consumption. And it becomes viscous if you have viscosity. And that oxygen diffusion is a problem because in polyline fermentation or the xanthan fermentation, so this is a very well-known problem, because people have been producing this type of polysaccharides since ages, and this is a very well. I was taught this problem in my first year of engineering. I came to we discussed the happens. Well, now when we call it EPS, that time we call it biopolymers. But EPS is the same thing.
Is there any impact on the?
Yes, there is a big impact on the microtubule growth. They are inhibitory. In general, they are very inhibitory. And but there are some commercial available, but very cheap. Normally in the lab, you will use some kind of silicon oil or those kind of things. Okay, they are readily available. You can purchase them. So for the students, they don't want to find efforts to buy the cheaper one and the industrial type, but they are not using this. For the industrial, they are very cheap and they are very effective, but they are toxic. So you should try to use the minimum antifoam agent because they are chemicals. And if you add too much of antifoam, as I told you, you may create a so-called permanent foam, and that will never go. They will spoil you. I think I have publication in Industrial Microbiology journal, sometimes in early 2000 on this issue. What I can figure out, and so there you measure that how to, in terms of the foam height on the top of the fermenter, and then we relate it to the.
So sir, how do we decide how much antifoam we have to add for that much amount of?
वो तो when the foam is going, so you have to upgrade. Normally we have automatic system. इसमें पता नहीं है तो लेकिन it's a big problem. We never operate it continuously because the problem you will face, you are not yet operated. Where you operate, you know. So what happens when the foam they go up?
मुझे समझ आ रहा है सर कि वो प्रॉब्लम आएगा क्योंकि फॉर्म जब ऊपर जाएगा तो फिर वो उसको पूरा वो नहीं कर पाएगा ना.
नहीं वो तो आ जाएगा. वो तो जब when foam will go up and it will touch the probe, it will actuate the pump.
Yes.
Right. And the pump will actuate and pump will drop the antifoam agent. तो उसके बाद क्या है? The foam will go down. Correct. वो तो down चला गया नहीं, pump तो बंद वो कर देगा. लेकिन what happens normally वो एक it leaves some kind of hanging biomass type of material. And that keep on either it touches the wall or it touches the level of the liquid. And when it touches the level of the liquid, so you have permanent connection. And the students they do. That's why I said, okay, fermenter is not something that fine, I'll come after 6 hours and take the samples and then go and sleep again. I'll come 2 o'clock in the morning. Fine. No, you have to be on the fermenter. You have to be there. Or you have to ask someone, or you help the student or fellow student or your friend to be there and continuously keep monitoring. Why last question? I heard this last question.
सर वो मैं ये कह रहा था कि जो बेटी का आप आपने देखा गया कि दो अलग अलग कंडीशन में, एक जो नॉर्मल बीटी का जो प्रोटीन था, क्रिस्टल प्रोटीन, उसका अमीनो एसिड का सीक्वेंस और जो आपको जो मिला जो हाईली रिएक्टिव था, हाईली मतलब कि ये तो उस दोनों का जब आपने सीक्वेंस देखा तो बहुत ज़्यादा
डिफरेंस है,
डिफरेंस था।
बहुत ज़्यादा डिफरेंस थीसिस है, रेफरेंस है तो वो पढ़ गया। Unfortunately, my student did not publish that one, but that's an excellent one.
ये एक्चुअली सर अच्छा काम था, क्योंकि इसमें पता डोमेन वाइज एनालिसिस हो जाता है कि कौन सा डोमेन इसके इम्यूनिटी इसके मतलब कि उसके परफॉर्मेंस के लिए रिस्पॉन्सिबल है। सो इंडस्ट्री
लेकिन just think of that also. We have not imposed any condition on the BT to do that job or to create that sequence. BT has created by itself by virtue being in solution.
exactly.
So if you take the BT and put it in this fermenter in solution, it will be the same.
That's why I want to say that if we just look upon the sequence, so we can protein engineer that sequence in the.
That's absolutely possible, and then you should do that, okay? But I was not interested because I wanted to develop my process and sell to the industry. That was my goal. Certainly, I could go into this deep research of sequencing, but that was not my research goal, and that was not the goal of the financing agency who financed this research. They wanted to see some process develop and help to the industry. Because as I told you the other day, explained you what is the mechanism to the grants there, or the research money there is a specific objective. And you have to fulfill that objective and not to bifurcate from that. If you want to bifurcate from that objective, stated objective, more than 10%, then you have to go back and ask the permission of the agency that I want to change this objective in this way and I want to do this and explain them why you want to do this. Then they will give you promotion, and of course in general they will give you this. They won't bother about it, but you have to do that exercise. And if you have not done that job, and at the end of the project you have to submit a report, and these are not just paperwork, they are real reports. They are sent to the experts on the committee, or on the panelists, and those panelists have to examine and give the comments. And they submit to the organization, and then the funding organization will send to you. So system is very strong. I mean, at any stage, you cannot skip any point. Even if I ask a postdoc fellow on my project and tomorrow morning I want to change it to something else, then I have to go back and take a permission. I cannot decide myself. Even my university cannot decide that. Is it all in the hand of the financing organization? Of course, this organization funds throughout the Canada, East to West, to our universities. So, sorry, that was not my objective and I was very interested.
So,
Interesting findings.
हैं? अरे बहुत हैं इंटरेस्टिंग बात तो आप लोग पूछते नहीं हैं तो मुझे कुछ ग्रिल नहीं करते तो क्या बताऊँ?
Professor Tyagi, I'd like to introduce another my two students just now speaking. She is Asmita. She worked on this wastewater and sludge from the Vasant Kunj and other part of this Delhi impact. Asmita, what you have done? Tell me. Yeah. No, that's okay. You can. You can come here. You can come here because. And then another is she is Swati. She worked on this pH, polyaromatic hydrocarbons.
Oh, pH.
So Asmita, you tell Professor Tyagi about your experiences and the work that you have done. Yeah, it's recording already. So if you can say something that what you have done, and then Professor, if you have any query and anything that you want to ask.
Hello sir, I'm Asmita. I recently submitted my thesis under Professor Thakur. My topic was biodegradation and detoxification of wastewater contaminants, basically effluent that I collected from treatment plant, and production of value-added products, just biopolymers that you just mentioned, EPS and PHA, by bacteria that are isolated from sewage sludge of the same plant in living species. So that included,
So you isolated the bacteria and checked the regulation of polyaromatic hydrocarbons?
No, not pH, it's overall contaminants in general.
Overall contaminants. So what were those contaminants you were looking for?
Not any specific class of contaminants, it was just an overall, we did GCMS analysis and heavy metal analysis. So on the basis of that, the overall degradation of contaminants using that bacteria.
What is asking you, what are the major contaminants?
The
Which
contaminant
type of
classes that we
contaminants
got
that you
were
have?
phenols, then we also got polyaromatic hydrocarbons, some halogenated compounds, and some pesticides, pharmaceuticals. So these were the different classes that we got, but we did not target, I did not target any particular compound. It was just an overall study of the degradation using GCMS, CanMore, and heavy metal analysis, nitrate, phosphate, these basic parameters, plus using these contaminants, the production of biopolymers.
So how much biopolymer is, I guess, is extracellular polysaccharide?
Yeah, EPS one, I worked on 2 strains. One was Serratia, one was Bacillus. Bacillus was producing EPS. Ours was 0.83 gram per liter. So how much, that is an average value. It varies.
That's very good.
Yeah, it varies. So depending on, it ranges from 300 mg to, say, depending upon the conditions, it varies. So and then Serratia, I use Serratia to produce bioplastics. But the thing is, this Bacillus strain also showed accumulation of bioplastics, but at a low level.
So how much accumulation of bioplastics you observed?
And in Serratia it was...
I have many questions, sorry for that.
No, it's fine. 0.3, it was 0.3 gram per liter.
No, normally you mentioned in terms of grams per gram of biomass.
It's a dry biomass.
Right,
Dry
so
biomass.
that I just mentioned it in terms of gram per liter.
Biomass?
So what's your biomass concentration?
Biomass concentration that I took was, I think in terms of CFU, it was 7 in 10 power of 7.
You don't measure the dry weight?
Yeah, we calculated the dry, right now I don't remember the figure of dry weight, but I actually mentioned in my thesis in terms of gram per liter, so that is what I remember.
And what type of carbon substrate you were using?
Carbon was wastewater. Wastewater plus glucose supplemented with...
So on wastewater there is less BOD, the concentration of biomass must be very low.
So that is why we got
And
low.
this
But the
you
thing was-
isolated from wastewater itself?
No, serious sludge.
Oh yes, yes.
So the thing
Wastewater
is...
goes into
sludge.
Yeah, but the thing is, Serratia was isolated from sludge and Bacillus was isolated from heat shock sludge.
Did you, ask me one question. Did you ever read any of my work on radiation?
Pardon?
Did you ever read any of my work on EPS production, isolation of bacterial strains, EPS producing
I checked
wastewater
your,
sludge?
some of the publications that sir told me from sludge you did some PHA production and directly.
So we did a lot of also
Huh.
EPS production too.
That I didn't check.
We have, I think I have more than 15, 16 papers.
Okay, I didn't check that.
Recently, we have published in PRT, Resource Technology,
Okay.
Petroleum and Environmental Engineering Journal, also an FDI analysis of EPS.
Okay.
So, in fact, one of my thesis is what are you doing?
Anyway, what we can do that we can see the future prospects.
Okay, very good.
So
But why you were but why you were interested in EPS?
So that's a different story actually. Basically, I was, should I tell him? Basically, I was interested in biohydrogen. So that's why I isolated those heat shock strains. But the thing is, while searching for that, we did get a culture in which from 100 ml of that culture, pure culture, that was a Bacillus cereus, similar to cereus strain. We got a very good production, but maybe due to some inhibition factors, it stopped. But the heat shock strains that I got 6 heat shock strains. One of them was showing a very good mucilaginous growth on Petri plate. So I read somewhere that yes, those bacteria that show on Petri plate, they might be potential producers of EPS. Then I started screening this strain for EPS production, and when I first cultured it on those EPS producing sucrose media, it showed a very good precipitation after alcohol precipitation. So thereafter I started, maybe this strain has a little bit potential for
Investigate
EPS.
to produce.
And then I worked on those lines because this project couldn't work. My target was biohydrogen production, but unfortunately that strain couldn't produce anymore. So I had to, just like you said, we have to choose our path. It's not that we can divert. Thesis and synopsis have to be given. So I just chose these biopolymer strains. So
Yeah, just to in comment.
Jasmita, one more thing you tell me, perhaps your Bacillus was very close to Bacillus thuringiensis.
Yeah, Bacillus, this one, EPS one, Bacillus amyloliquefaciens.
You strain the Bacillus amyloliquefaciens.
Quite similar, amyloliquefaciens, or you can say
or like any formats. You must be knowing these are the potential EPS producers. So yeah, it's quite similar in morphology, but I think it shows 90% similarity. But because it's a heat shock, so it has a little bit different morphology. I've checked the morphology, so you can see the strains are given. And now Christina is working on those lines, so it's under her custody, the strain. So I think you can check it. But yeah, sorry,
just a comment. No, it's okay. No,
attend your lecture.
You have done a very good job. But no, just to give a comment because we also had lots of EPS.
Yes.
And this paper was published quite some time back.
Might be I've seen during my thesis.
And Serratia was one of the best producers also.
Yeah, Serratia.
But the production concentration was up to 5, 6 or 10 grams per liter. If I remember 5, 6 or 10 grams.
Serratia does.
I'm not sure about it. It was 10 grams per liter.
He's saying that he's gets 7 grams per liter.
Yeah,
7 grams. Which also produces lipid.
Yeah.
It's also generated
Yeah.
lipid. So 7 gram EPS and how much the lipid? In terms
Lipid,
of weight by weight.
but when we try to separate out, that biomass and from biomass to lipid, it's a lipid around 40%, sir. 40%.
So 5 grams per liter EPS, 40%.
7 grams.
7 grams.
Are you sure you did not commit any mistakes while separating your lipids? How many measure lipids?
I just separate the biomass from EPH.
Okay, so
And
that
then,
that sense, okay.
No, no.
You centrifuge.
No,
so
centrifuge and 2 or 3 times we wash the biomass
Alright.
and then directly dry the biomass, and by using methanol and chloroform we heated the biomass to 60
you
degrees
extract.
and we extracted that.
You get the biomass or you get the solution. You get the lipid and in the chloroform solution you phase separation.
Yeah.
पूरी बात नहीं बता रहे हैं
नहीं, नहीं।
तो phase separation के बाद then you separate the chloroform phase EPS lipid in the chloroform phase.
Yeah.
Right, and then you evaporate chloroform, you get gravimetric analysis.
Gravimetric liquid.
So what I would like to tell you very strongly, now what do you do that? You take the same sample and pass through GCMS
Okay.
to measure the individual fatty acids.
Yeah,
That
All
that
the
he has
chain.
done. That he has done.
And then compare with that chain, what is the difference between the two? Because you know what happens when you have, by centrifugation and washing, you have removed all the slime, correct? So-called the, how do you say that? Yeah, one is the capsular EPS.
Yeah.
Slime.
the-
So he has removed all the slime. That's what he has.
So, but you cannot remove capsule.
Capsular, yeah.
And capsular EPS will dissolve in chloroform.
And Serratia is a very
That
high.
may, I'm not saying that there's error, but one must check it. And that capsular EPS will introduce error in your measurement. Because my students are also doing exactly the same job. Anyway, I will give a presentation on that. And, I think I should give these presentations, not all these, whatever I'm giving you. And then we found that this error was there. And I told my student that to go back and check it, and she found the error of almost 20 to 30%. So I'm not saying your data is incorrect, it's absolutely correct, but please check it.
We also did the same
You
thing.
repeat it.
We also did the same thing,
Sure.
sir, with the same strain.
You are working on this.
Like
so you
after the separation of biomass,
Christina has
dissolve
a
the dry the
mechanism by
biomass
which she removes
and dissolve in chloroform and heated at 60 degrees centigrade.
Oh,
And then
yeah,
filtered
yeah,
out.
That's a
capsular
standard
EPS.
procedure.
Yeah, filtered out, and then what we did.
Then you extract another time. Because 2 times you have to extract.
Yeah. But after the little concentrate, when we concentrate that extracted chloroform partner, and when we use 10 times hexane precipitation, the things are get precipitated. Maybe that is PHA.
Could be possible.
PHA. I mean, even
All
I
of
have
them, they all
that sample in the
coexist.
lab.
Basically PHA and lipids and EPS, they coexist.
Coexist.
Ah,
yeah,
yes, they
exactly.
coexist.
But the problem is that when EPS is, okay, it depends on the microorganism, but if you take the municipal cells as such, they produce more EPS than PHA
PHA.
or than lipid. I'll give some data. I think I should give this presentation first. Then
Yeah, that's what we are waiting for.
But somebody started, she started talking to me in the fermentation, he started talking to me PHA, so I tried to mod myself.
Incoming 3
get into that
lecture is
line
very
of action.
important for us. That is
Yeah, no, I think
PHA and the EPS.
Professor Saab, we are doing exactly I think same. And in our case, I just got the manuscript yesterday of my student, she sent to me. And we have something like 12 grams, 12 to 20 grams of EPS. And we have about, I think 27, something like that, 27% of EPS.
20 shillings.
but confirmed with GCMS, not of course. She has done also that. When I said no, I don't believe the result, then she went back and she did the GCMS and corrected it. So it's about,
Maybe by
I think it's
a
about
standard, sir?
47%.
By using a standard.
By using?
A standard. After the
Standard.
GCM.
Yeah, of course. On GC we use
standard.
that a standard is available, of course.
Yeah.
Otherwise you cannot quantify it.
Mhm.
With GCMS, if you do not have a standard, you cannot quantify. You can compare with the library
Mhm.
or the GCMS,
Yeah.
what compound is there.
Yeah, yeah.
But to have a quantitative, you have to put a standard.
That's right.
Yeah.
And there is all the standard is same all around. I think
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
the same
We
companies
have-
have that same standard.
We have
everywhere.
we
I have
we already run the.
I don't have that. No, I'm not doubting that.
Okay.
Don't be defensive,
Yeah.
man.
I think that, so Swati, you come here.
We are discussing, open discussion. I mean, it's not something like. But yeah, if
See,
because we are all in the research business, we make
Swati,
all the
you tell
time.
us
We are prone to commit
what
mistakes.
we have done.
But we have to find out, like I was telling Professor yesterday that when we were doing this to you this morning, until 10 years we did not know what exactly is the factor that we should attack to minimize the cost. And we were just optimizing fermentation all the time, determining entomotoxicity in the fermentation broth, which was of no use. Of course, we published, I don't know, some 50, 60 papers on that in almost top-notch journal of this world. And after 10 years, when we started going to the industry and asking left and right, and they said, what is this, what is this, what is this? And then we said, oh, so we went back. So, and then our cost programs also told us many things. So, I mean, there's nothing is a research. Every day we have new experience. So we are prone to the mistakes. So you come to fashion, be professional, never get that. Oh, no.
So see Swati.
Magic.
So I have submitted, I'm Swati and I have submitted my thesis in representative officer, and I was working on biodegradation of pyrene, and for which I have isolated bacteria from landfill site. Most of the pH biodegrading bacteria are isolated from petroleum sites. So I have isolated from, I isolated bacteria from landfill sites, and first of all I quantified the pH in different landfill sites of Delhi, which most of the pHs were found in all the 3 landfill sites. So I've chosen Ghazipur landfill site, one of the most contaminated sites, which contain most of the pHs, and it's full of contaminants, like it contains sterols, it contains phenols, contains most of the aromatic compounds in it. So I isolated my bacteria from that Ghazipur landfill site and used it for pyrene biodegradation. Pyrene is high molecular weight pH, and its structure is similar to most of the carcinogenic pHs. So for that reason I have chosen pyrene as the compound, and for that I got Pseudomonas species as one of the pyrene degrading bacteria, which isolates from Ghazipur, and it has a potential of degrading pyrene in soil as well, so that we can use that bacteria for decontamination of sites as well.
So it's very active. How much is the percent efficiency will you get?
So I've in culture, most of the 100% of the pyrene has been removed by the Pseudomonas species.
And are you sure that it is degraded to CO2 or some intermediate compound is produced?
Intermediate compounds were produced. Also, I have not gone for radioactive labeling type experimentation, so
You cannot do
in that
everything
case,
in a
yeah.
PhD, of course. Right? Yeah.
Okay then. I think that today's
Maybe some other question, no?
So about your formulation of the biochar.
I have done. So you can take 5, 6, 10 minutes. And
Well, only formulation is a very big topic. Okay, so why formulation? Okay, couple of slides. Why formulation? Okay, that's it. Product cost efficient. Okay. To increase the shelf life and the field persistence. Field persistence means when you apply the product, it stays for a long time. Because if you do not formulate and just spray as it is, probably it will be washed out in a couple of hours and there's no use wasting time. Improves the field product efficacy. So that means high kill rate, UV protection, and rain fastness. Okay, rain fastness means that it makes leaves, it doesn't get washed. Okay. Ease of application. So that are the reason that you have to formulated product. Biggest challenge in surface formulation because it is a non-Newtonian behavior. I'm not sure if you know what is Newtonian and non-Newtonian behavior and the plastic behavior. And here are some ideas, formulation. So basically what you need that because you have a microbial ingredient which is active ingredient, it must stay intact. Its activity, so it should stay alive. While any other contaminant should not enter into your product. Physical stability, dispersibility, sustainability, miscibility, and corrosion. Basically, like dispersibility, it should be homogeneous. It should not settle in the tank of the airplane. Otherwise, it will cause problems, obvious problems. Sustainability is the same thing. Miscibility, that okay, if let's say when you have a 76 or 72 B product, so they take it to the field and there they dilute it to 48 B because in the aeroplane they do not apply 76 B but they purchase 76 B because it costs them less. Correct? And they take it to the site, and in Canada, as I told you, we have lots of lake. So they fill up water to the lake and they dilute it. So in that dilutions, it should be miscible. Because if it's not miscible, it will create problems. Right? Then corrosion. It should not corrode the tanks of the aeroplane. You can think of it, you can imagine the expenditure it may incur if it corrodes. Okay? Believe us, it took us almost 4 months to deal with this problem. Our formulation was ready. We were ready to go to spray, and this company person came back. Okay, he got us an aluminum rod, okay, something like 1 foot long and maybe 1 inch wide, and said, okay, no, you put it in your formulations for 48 hours. Okay, normally planes takes about 5-6 hours to spray, and we put it in for 48 hours, and it was good. It's an aluminum plane, okay, because normally the planes have the aluminum tanks. So we have to go back and we have to improve because if the tank, if they continuously in sequence, if they keep on filling and spraying it for the whole season, the tank will go. Then they have to replace all the biological efficacy. So in formulation is also that biological efficacy must be intact in the field. Synergy application equipment very important because you cannot change the equipment, right? That is there already because they are using it for some other product. So you have to prepare a product which suits that application equipment and not that they change their nozzle to suit your formulation, your product. So and these are the viscosity, particle size, density, and droplet size. And where this is the droplet size, where we had a problem. As I mentioned, we are improving it. So this year is already late, but we will test it in 2017. Sprays are made in early month of May or middle of May. So you have to recover for centrifugation through centrifuge, store adjuvants. I want to show you. Then you have to add all these recovery, suspension, protection, adherence, antimicrobial agents, phagostimulant. This is very important. Very, very important diagram, but I have no time to explain you. Basically, this determines the capacity of the centrifuge. This is basically the design of the centrifuge. And now you see that ERE mean efficiency removal of entomotoxicity or entomotoxicity removal efficiency during the centrifugation process. You might be producing very high concentration, but if you lose during centrifugation, this is a big problem. So anyway, so you can see that the thermal hydrolysis is the maximum efficiency because normally industrial centrifuges they operate at this level, at this G level. Okay, and therefore the removal efficiency is very high in thermal process. Okay, we will not go. This represents the requirement of centrifuge. The sigma is the surface area. That's how in the industry it is determined. And U is also, I want to do some, okay, here are the certain different antimicrobial agents. And you have to test one by one, what is the optimum concentration. You have to test for UV screens, okay, what is the optimum concentration. So here are there, okay, now, anyway, these are our optimum concentration, please. But we use normally propionic acid here at the bottom as an antimicrobial agent. And this is something like a relation between protease and that is it. So I think I have a composition of my formulation. I don't know if I would like to show. No, unfortunately, no, I do not have it because it is our confidentiality. It is our own formulation which we have developed, and that's the reason that it is not here. Okay? So basically, these are all the ingredients you have to have. UV screens, rainfastness, okay? Stability, antimicrobial agent, dispersibility, expandability, viscosity, and therapeutics. So these things you have to maintain, and that's why you add lots of. Like for example, for suspendability, you add sorbitol. Sorbitol, when you add sorbitol, sorbitol has a tendency. Now, you measure also the zeta potential. Your zeta potential versus sorbitol concentration is a relation, and then you should have a zeta potential in a zone where the suspendability is next. We'll go in detail. We can discuss it.
Okay. Thank you. So I think that today's session